Welcome to the final session of Tamebay Live this Wednesday on Brand Day, and delighted to be in this session with StockX. If you'd like to find out more about StockX or any of our presenting partners, don't forget to go and visit the showcases. The networking area of Tamebay Live will be open for an hour after this session, so there'll be plenty of time. And you'll find that the presenters or their colleagues on each showcase more than happy to help you with the tools and services they can provide. Now, in this session, if you've got any questions about StockX, at the bottom of your screen, just below the presentation part, you'll find a little red box where you can submit questions. So please feel free to put them in, and I'll be putting as many of those questions to our speaker today as possible. This is Brand Day, so we've been talking all about how brands can expand their presence on marketplaces and control the brand's experience. But come back tomorrow when we're going to be looking at cross-border trade. And then on Friday, we're going to be looking at how you can expand your business off marketplaces. But today, I'm delighted to welcome Olivier from StockX. Olivier is the GM and VP of Europe at StockX. He launched the European business in 2018 and has overseen its expansion. Multi-language, multi-country, it's a real success story. Prior to StockX, Olivier held roles at eBay, Ancestry.com. He's a Belgium national but lives in the UK. He's got a dual master's in economics and engineering and an MBA, so very well qualified. Olivier, welcome to Tamebay Live.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, StockX, I've heard about the name for several years because you were based in the US in Detroit, I believe, to start with, but you're now in Europe. Who are StockX?
Yes, well, a very, very interesting question. Let me describe to you the moment I thought this thing is going to be huge. Back in the summer of 2018, I was back from a trip to the US. I was sitting in our sort of family, it's got a living room. My wife's sister was visiting from New Zealand, and we were chatting about what we've been up to, as as families do. And one of my nephews was sitting at the far end of the room, bored out of his mind on his mobile, as you would expect as a 15-year-old. And at some point I mentioned I'd just been to Detroit to meet the founders of this really interesting company that I was talking about potentially taking a role there. And I mentioned this company called StockX. And Nick, my nephew, who had been bored out of his mind on his mobile, suddenly looked up and said, "Did you say StockX?" and rushed across the room to show me on his mobile, brought up the app, and was so excited to say, "Everybody in my school loves StockX. It is amazing." And I thought, hang on, this is a kid who lives on the South Island of New Zealand, who is absolutely passionate about a business and a brand that is nowhere near got started in going international.
So you suddenly got cool very, very quickly.
It is epitomized two things that are really special about StockX. Huge appeal to that Gen Z audience that is incredibly hard to aggregate, and huge organic appeal, huge attraction for that audience to say, this is a place I want to be, I want to track it. So let me explain how we came together, from that, wow, there is something there, I probably want to get involved. So StockX launched in Detroit, in the US in February of 2016, so literally just over 5 years ago. And it was founded by a multi-billionaire, Dan Gilbert, the owners, amongst other things, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, by Josh Luber, who is a passionate sneakerhead serial entrepreneur who thought there must be a better way to sort of handle the resale of sneakers, and by Greg Schwartz, who is a serial sort of entrepreneur himself and product expert. The three of them built around a really interesting and quite groundbreaking idea, which is, how about creating a consumer marketplace that functions just like the stock market? Meaning, if you're a seller, you place an ask. If you've got a product to sell, you say, I'm prepared to sell that product for so much. If you're a buyer, you place a bid. I'm prepared to buy that product for so much. When a bid and an ask match, a trade is then recorded. And that's the beauty of the platform. So the benefit, their idea, that their hope was that with that real-time, very visible dynamic pricing, you could facilitate transactions for products where there isn't really an obvious pricing that sort of clears demand and supply. But basically, that was their belief, and that model has proven immensely successful. It started as a sneaker resale platform back in 2016. It's now a multi-category e-commerce marketplace. It started in the US 5 years ago. It now has a worldwide footprint in Europe, definitely, and we can talk more about that, but also in Japan, in Hong Kong, Korea, Australia, Canada. From launch in 2016, we have over $3.8 billion of merchandise value so far, and over 1,000 team members.
So it's growing big, and you missed New Zealand off the list, but it's obviously got as far as New Zealand as well, where you're a 15-year-old.
200 countries actually is where we see buyers sort of come from and connect on the platform.
So when it comes down to it, what really makes StockX different from other marketplaces? What makes you unique?
So that's something we think about a lot, obviously, because we really want to sort of build on those unique characteristics. First and foremost, as we touched on previously, this huge global audience of buyers with especially strong sort of Gen Z profile. So we're talking about the 16-24 demographic, over 200 countries, 30 million visitors last quarter. So a real sort of buyer buoyancy. The other thing that's quite unique about StockX is we operate a curated catalog, meaning that any product that's transacted on StockX, we as StockX put up together the photos, the product description, the sizes, and builds that catalog that allows trading between buyers and sellers. We have over 125,000 individual products that are therefore kind of available. All the products we sell are brand new. That's the deal, that's the expectation. So they have to be in the original packaging, all accessories if applicable. So there's no gray area around the condition or otherwise. It is a brand new, as it would be straight out of the shop. The key categories that we work with have been traditionally around sneakers or trainers, but we've now really built other sort of Gen Z type sort of appeal categories, fashion and the type of labels that Gen Z are interested in, luxury goods, more recently consumer electronics and collectible. Another thing that's very unique about StockX is that we authenticate every item, meaning when a buyer and seller commit to a transaction, the seller ships to us. And we have in 11 authentication centers around the world, specially trained authenticators who will examine the condition of the product to make sure that it's real and not a fake, that it's in the condition expected, and it's got all the accessories. So we put our mark on, if the item is traded on StockX, you can be absolutely sure that you're going to get what you're waiting for, what you're expecting. So you get great visibility on pricing, you get peace of mind when you transact, and you get the convenience of StockX being that sort of partner in the middle who facilitates and enables all the trades.
So I'm guessing that from what you've said so far, that StockX, it really is very much like buying shares on the stock exchange, that if I'm in the market to buy shares, I don't really care who's selling them. All I want to do is I want to have that share certificate that says, yes, you own the shares. And that's kind of like your authentication. Yes, it is the real product.
Exactly.
And I don't care who I'm, as a seller, I don't care who's buying from me. As a buyer, I don't care who's selling to me. It's all about the product and making sure that product is authentic. Does that sound about right?
That's exactly right. That's absolutely spot on. Our founder, Josh Luber, used to take the example that if you're buying a share in Apple, you just want to know it's a share in Apple. You don't know which share in Apple. You don't know who's the other side of the trade. You want to make sure that it is a legit share in Apple at a price that you're prepared to buy it for and that a seller is prepared to sell it for. So it's precisely that concept applied to consumer goods, which generally have real scarcity. So they can be hard to find. StockX makes them available, and really hard sometimes to peg what is a fair price for that product. And on StockX, because every product comes with, and you can see on the product page of any product on StockX, you've got the history of transactions, you've got the price trend, you've got at any point in time visibility on how much a buyer is prepared to pay, how much a seller is offering. So you have that complete visibility on pricing.
So if I'm a seller, because everyone watching today is probably on the sell side rather than the buy side, although they may be a customer as well. But on the selling side, how does it work as a seller? Because if I don't even know who's buying from me, I guess I can't see buyer feedback or if anyone's had any problems with them before, or Does the buyer keep returning things? How does it work as a seller?
Well, that is probably one of the biggest sort of strengths in the StockX value proposition. Our number one goal is to make it as easy as possible to sell. And frankly, we take care of all the hassle. As a seller, what we want you to do is concentrate on sourcing great supply and deciding when to sell it and for how much. So in practice, what does it mean? So you choose a product that you want to sell, and let's take a pair of sneakers. It is already in our catalog, right? So you don't have to take photographs, you don't have to put a description, it's already there. You basically go to the site or on app and you place an ask, which is the price at which you want to sell that product. The other thing you can do, and by the way, if you do that, you already know what the asks are. You know what the going price is for that product. And you can decide, do I want to sort of undercut everybody and sell this thing? Or do I want to just sort of put it roughly the where the market is? Or the other thing you can do is you can see the demand, you can see the bids, you can see how much is prepared to pay for that very pair that you own currently. And so you can choose to take that bid. There's already a buyer ready and waiting for it with a payment pre-approved, ready to transact. So you can either set the price you want to sell at or take a price that's already on offer. And once the trade has been concluded, whichever way you got to it, you then ship to us. We've got an authentication center in London. We've got another one in the Netherlands. The system will tell you where to ship it to. It's generally free shipping in a lot of our markets. And then from then on, we take care of the rest. So if once we've received the product and we authenticated it to confirm that it's exactly what the buyer is expecting, you will get your payout. That's it.
So I know on products like trainers, a lot of people buy them to collect them, but I'm guessing a few people might want to wear them. So what happens if the buyer gets the trainers and they've ordered a size 9.5 and they're a bit tight and they say, can I return it?
So this is where we take care of everything, and it's a really important aspect of the experience. As a seller, if you've sold us what you were expected to sell, then you'll get your payout. We then handle all the interactions with the buyer. You don't need to know who it is. You don't need to know whether they're trustworthy, whether they're going to be difficult. You don't even have any customer service contact with the buyer whatsoever. You are in control and you are completely sort of insulated, so to speak. We call it sort of anonymity. You don't need to know what's happening on the other side of the trade. We take care of that.
So I don't have to deal with buyers or buyer questions or anything at all.
You don't. That's one super important advantage of StockX. Nor do you need to worry about where the buyer is, for instance. You, as a seller, say based in the UK, you will ship to our UK authentication center. We will have already in our matching algorithm, based on where the buyer is, figured out what are the duties applicable, how much it will cost to ship, and we take care of all of that. And so you just ship to your local authentication center, which is very fast, and then you get the payout when we authenticate. After that, StockX takes care of everything. You're in control as a seller, basically.
So this is really interesting because I'm guessing once it gets to the authentication center and you say, yes, that is the genuine product that you said you'd ship, I get paid out, then that is it. I don't have to deal with the buyer at all. But something that interests me is what happens with merchants or retailers who've got multiple quantities of a brand? How can they sell can they sell a whole lot in one go, or how does that work?
It really depends on their desire for what I describe as velocity versus margin. Because of our, millions and millions of visitors and millions of buyers around the globe, we have just a lot of sort of demand liquidity, if you will. And when you come in as a seller wanting to sort of move a certain quantity of products, you can basically say, you know what, as long as I reached a certain minimum price, I'm good to go. And you can basically shift as many of these products as you can. You have visibility on the demand, you have a visibility on those bids. Or if you say, you know what, I really want to make a certain sort of minimum sort of amount on this product, you will still get velocity over time, but you can basically decide to sort of play a bit more of a waiting game. And then you will see what the trends are like, whether the product's going down in price or going up in price. You can make informed decisions around, how fast and with what margin you move your product.
So this is really interesting because it sounds like a great way of moving stock when there's already demand there and you've not got to worry about buyers. But can we take a look at it from the buyer experience? Obviously, if I'm selling things, I want to make sure my buyers are happy. What does it look like from the buyer's side? Do they see me? Do they know me?
Likewise, they don't need to know you, because StockX stands in the middle and takes care of the whole experience. As a buyer, it's very much the kind of the opposite, but sort of a similar experience that I described for a seller. As a buyer, if you're looking for a product to purchase, you will be on our app or on our website, you will find the product you're interested in, you will see price trends, you will see that same product description, so you know exactly what it is you're purchasing, and you can see the going price for that product. You can see sellers' asks. You don't know who the sellers are, you don't need to know who the sellers are, but you see the asks that they've put there, and you can see the lowest ask, and if you're happy to pay that price, you will literally say, right, I'm buying. Or if you say, and by the way, every product I bought on StockX, I've followed the alternative approach I'm about to describe. You say, okay, they're offering 200. This, as a seller, I'm going to offer 180. And then you see what happens. And then over time, there may be a seller who says, actually, there is a buyer at 180. I'm just going to take that bid. And so there is that sort of dance between bids and asks in real time. But ultimately, as a buyer, either I take a price or I put a bid, and then I wait to see if that bid gets accepted. When the bid is accepted, or I've decided to purchase, I'll be kept informed, and when the seller is shipped, when we received it, when it's on its way to me. And so it's a very, very seamless experience for the buyer as well. And they know that StockX will put its sort of mark of authentication on the product. So what they will get is in perfect condition and legit, and exactly what they were expecting.
So if we take your example of a buyer that's put a bid in at 180, and I've got stock and I just can't sell at less than 200, and I put an offer in at 200 to sell. Can that buyer see my offer and decide, you know what, I'm fed up with waiting, I will pay the extra £20?
Exactly. That's exactly right. On every product page, you will see at any point in time, in real time, the asks and the bids. And so either that buyer says, well, there's no movement on the seller price, I'm going to increase my bid. Or the seller says, there's no movement on the buyer bids, and I want to sell my product, so I'm going to lower my price. It's exactly that mechanic. Demand meets supply. What is the price that will generate a trade in real time across 125,000 products across 200 markets?
Yeah, so this is very, very different to other marketplaces that we've come across. So how can brands engage with StockX? If the customer doesn't know they're buying from the brand, obviously the brand wants to have their products out there. There's demand for their products. Does it make a difference if the brand is selling on your website on StockX, or whether it's a retailer? Are there any advantages to going direct to the consumer or to going through a normal distribution channel?
Well, our vision at StockX is to provide access for in-demand and sometimes really scarce products at really sort of visible and transparent pricing. So in many ways, we are kind of leveling the playing field between the small guy and the really, really big company, because everybody can sell on StockX as long as they sort of meet some sort of basic requirements. Big or small, all sellers are on the same footing. Having said that, we obviously have an interest in working with brands who might be interested in StockX as a distribution mechanism, and we have obviously conversations going on. We also have some formats that help brands actually take products to market directly on StockX as well. So our vision is that the small, sort of pastime, so to speak, sort of casual hobbyist reseller is absolutely on the same level playing field as the big brand or the sort of bigger retailer.
And I guess even if you're being uncut by a large retailer, you can do the, okay, I'll wait till the stock runs out and the demand is still there and achieve my price, or vice versa. You can say, actually, I'll undercut them and I'll get my sales in before them.
Exactly. And we see sort of different sort of profile of sellers, over the life cycle of a product. Typically, when a product is released, there will be, sort of trends in the price. It might sort of build up in anticipation of the release. It might go down when a bit more sort of volume hits the market, and then it'll sort of pop up again. And certain sellers choose to play the long game, by the way. Certain sellers decide, I'm going to hold on this because I have a pretty good expectation based on similar products in the past or my appreciation of that particular product, what I think the prices will do over time. and then they will kind of play that waiting game and choose at what point is the right point for them to sell.
And you just tweaked my interest with something there, which is pre-sales. If I know a product's coming out, do you cater for pre-sales, or do you wait until people have actually got the product in their hand?
So generally speaking, we expect the sellers to ship within 2 business days of the trade being recorded, because otherwise it's unfair on the buyer at the other end, who has to sort of sit on their hands and wait for this. There are certain specific circumstances where we know that a brand or a retailer will make sort of certain items available with a longer period of time between the item being sold, so to speak, and being physically in the hands of the buyer. And so for those instances, we just make an allowance for that, make it very visible to everybody that there will be a longer period of time, and everybody is generally pretty aware of that. It's about sort of setting expectations, but generally speaking, we expect the seller to have the item in hand or be very confident he can ship to us within 2 business days.
Yeah. And on the shipping to you, we've got a question coming in, and we mentioned that the seller gives the item to StockX to authenticate. Does StockX provide the rest of the fulfillment for the item, or is the seller involved? So once it's got to you and been authenticated, what happens next?
What happens next is, as a seller, that's it. We take care of everything else. So we will have, for a given item that is coming from one of our UK sellers, we might have a buyer just down the road. We'll have another buyer for a different product. Obviously, there might be in California, another one who might be in Hong Kong, another one that might be in Melbourne. And so we take care of all of that. We will have our logistics facilities that are very, very sophisticated, and different carriers who will ultimately get the goods across to the right buyer, having cleared customs and taken care of all of those sort of admin formalities, which can be quite complicated. So big benefit for sellers. Your only job is source the product, choose at what price to sell it for, and ship it to us. That's it.
So that sounds superb. So it really is cutting out all. Effectively, I'm almost selling to StockX, or I might as well be, because you're the only people I have to deal with. So long as I get the product to you within a couple of days, so long as the product's authentic, then all of the Brexit troubles and cross-border, all of the new customs legislations coming out, like the US Stop Act, they want product data, electronic data in advance of shipping and everything. I don't have to worry about any of that. If I can ship it from the UK to London or from Europe to the Netherlands, that's it, end of story. I get paid. I can forget that product ever existed.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And we obviously on our side invest a lot of resources, technology resources, and sort of business resources in making sure that that global trading platform can handle all these pretty complex kind of instances and requirements. But that's the beauty. At scale, we can do this very, very well, and leaving that headache to us, not to individual sellers.
I think there's a lot of retailers and merchants that would be very happy to leave that headache to you. Now, I want to explore a little deeper. We've talked about sneakers, or trainers as we call them this side of the pond, but you've expanded your categories. So obviously I can only sell products which are already in your catalogue, but which categories are you trading in now? Which categories work best? Is it still mainly trainers, or has it expanded into other categories? And what other types of products can I sell on StockX?
Sure, absolutely. So we started as a sneaker resale marketplace. We've absolutely evolved to a multi-category e-commerce player, and sneakers, trainers remains a very, very important category for us. And this is a category where there is huge volumes being traded, and a huge opportunity for StockX to provide that visibility on the price and guarantee of authenticity. And so if you're a seller interested or able to source the likes of sort of Nike, Jordan, Adidas, Yeezy, and the like, New Balance, you will see a lot of momentum on StockX. We have absolutely expanded our categories. The next biggest category for us, always thinking about what are scarce products that have a sort of current culture, kind of in the moment, Gen Z appeal, aspect to them, is fashion or apparel, especially those labels that appeal to the Gen Z audience. So we're talking about the Fear of Gods, we're talking about the Supreme, and we're busy expanding that catalog for sure. And then beyond that, we have recently and very successfully expanded into consumer electronics. games consoles, but also graphics cards, accessories, headphones, and the like. We've also expanded into luxury, especially those brands who are really making an effort to appeal to that Gen Z audience, so the likes of Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and the like. And then other really interesting categories, we're seeing a lot of traction in our collectibles, trading cards. We've seen a craze in Pokemon trading cards, for instance. And so we continue to expand those categories with at the heart, sneakers, apparel, luxury. That's a sort of the core sort of set of categories that we play in.
And what sort of depth have you got in those categories? So if I've got a pair of Nikes or Jordans that are a really short run, so quite sought after, but maybe 20 years old, would they be listed in your catalogue? And if they're not, can you add them to your catalogue so I can sell them, or how does that work?
So we have a substantial catalog already. Over 125,000 items have been basically cataloged and sort of prepared for trading. We always look at opportunities to expand the catalog, and we generally just look forward at sort of new brands or new collections and new releases. We occasionally go and sort of backfill. We have a pretty extensive back catalog of real classics. As I'm sure you will and the listeners will understand, it's a sort of trade-off between the investment needed to create that catalog versus the likelihood of meaningful transactions. The model works when there is liquidity, so a one-off transaction probably doesn't work so well, but anything that has a good prospect of sort of meaningful volume of transactions, a meaningful velocity, we either have, or as a seller, particularly a seller of a certain size, you will generally have an account manager, and that as a channel, or sometimes other more sort of automated channels to suggest categories or items that you think StockX should be carrying. And we absolutely listening to that, as well as talking to our buyers and observing all our data to say, what is it that going to create an opportunity for more catalog expansion.
So I'm kind of interested in the liquidity of the marketplace that you keep talking about, and how StockX can match the buyers and sellers. Have you got any strategies for, if I was lucky enough to have 100 of something, should I be putting all 100 on, or should I be putting them on 10 at a time, or should I be saying, okay, I'll drip feed them over a certain number of weeks or months? Can I flood the market and the price go down so low that it is not good for me or any other sellers out there, although it might be very good for buyers? I don't want to oversupply, but also I want to shift this stock because I don't want to undersupply and have it hanging around forever. What strategies should I use?
Really, really important question. The beauty of the StockX platform, as a seller, you're equipped with the richest set of data and information to help you make that decision. So again, if you've got a particular product, you will be able, literally in a few keystrokes, to see what is the depth of demand for that product. And sometimes you will see, for a really in-demand product, a lot of bids from buyers with a very sort of narrow range of prices. That's a good indication that there is deep demand, and you can basically start to move volumes without seeing the price drop significantly. And by the way, you can experiment, right? You can sort of put 5, 3, 10, whatever it is, and see what happens.
And will I get multiple different prices? So if there's a bid for £100, a bid for £95, a bid for 90, and I say, okay, I'll accept the 90, but I've got a quantity of 3. Will I then get 90 for one, 95 for another, and 100 for another, exactly. Or will they all get it at 90?
You will get each transaction at the individual bid that buyer put for that particular product. And so at any point in time, that's what makes the sort of price fluctuate in real time, basically. And so you can, hypothetically, if you saw there were 100 bids that started at 100 and went all the way down to 50, you could take the 100 bids if you were the only seller, and then the last one would sell at 50. That might not be the smartest thing to do, but you can say, what, I'm very happy to sell up to 50. I will just push all that stock, but because of that real-time feedback you get from the market, as a seller, you can be pretty smart in deciding.
So you might say, I'll take all the bids between 100 quid and 80 quid rather than going all the way down to 50.
Exactly. Yeah. And then buyers will get a signal that, the price has dropped and might be interested. We signal in real time to our buyers who are interested in a product, what's happening with those price trends, and that might itself generate more. And say, the price has dropped, I want to come in. Actually, I'm prepared to pay 85. So you'll see some of these bids, pop back up, if you like. That's real time sort of demand means supply alchemy that happens, on the platform.
Now, someone's asked if you offer any support or educational programs for sellers getting into selling these more luxury and collectible goods. So, what can you offer on the support side for someone that's maybe never sold on StockX before, but have got interest in supplying luxury goods?
Mm. So I'd say a few things. One is there is a lot of information on the site already. We've got a whole About Us section that describes in quite some detail, how you go about selling on StockX. And frankly, it's really straightforward. There's not much more to it than what I've described, but it's explained with sort of videos, etc. The whole platform is available for anybody to book around and have a look. So you can go and see what's listed. You can see how many trades there are, what the going price is. You've got all that sort of visibility on all that information that you can use to inform your own decisions as to, is something I want to get into? Do I have that stock? Would I be happy with that price? And then as you sign up as a seller and as your sales grow, we also have a really, really good account management program that will allow you to basically lean on our expert account managers who can give you a lot of guidance. They can't exactly tell you what to sell and at what price, obviously, but there is just a lot of support available there. And on top of that, we have a very active blog that describes trends, and lots of information that help you as a seller anticipate and be aware of the trends.
So if, for instance, I've got an opportunity to acquire some, say, luxury watches, for example, I'm guessing I could look on StockX and see what the liquidity is like before I actually make a purchase of them, exactly, and be pretty confident I can turn them around the day they come into stock.
Exactly right. You could go so far as to say I could be at my supplier as a seller with like product that I can choose to purchase, and I can see what the going price is. I can literally the app on my phone and decide there and then, right, I can sell this for 100, I can buy it for 50. Let's just do the deal right there. It can be as real time as that if you would like to.
Now, it's interesting that you're originally US based, and obviously you've been in the US a lot longer than the UK and the EU. So what's happening this side of the Atlantic? What's happening in the UK and US and in the EU? Well, are we behind the US, or are we caught up with them already? Or
we're catching up fast. We're catching up fast. So yes, StockX was originally founded in Detroit, Michigan in 2016. And the original vision, frankly, as you would expect, was let's see how fast we can grow that in the US domestic market. Even then, a year or two in, there were very clear signals to the founders that there was organic interest from Europe. Back then, you had to transact in US dollars. You had to, as a seller, ship your product to a US authentication center. As a buyer, you had to pay for import duties, when on receiving your purchases. Because none of this was sort of wired up in the way that I've now described, as taking away all these headaches. And yet there were evidence of trades. So what the founders did, and where I came on the scene, was let's just see how we can basically tap into this latent interest in Europe. So our journey started in September 2018. When we basically a few of us, got started, and literally starting from a coffee shop, in the old tradition of startups, but soon set up the first authentication center in West London, launched the first version of StockX that had a couple of really simple changes. All the prices became available in pounds and euros. And you would ship your items to a European, back then, authentication center in London. That allows also to sort of lower some of our shipping fees. We saw a 5x growth literally in a matter of 3 months from that original launch in October 2018. The response from the market was absolutely phenomenal. So the next year, 2018, became all about, taking things further in Europe. So we opened an authentication center 4 times the size of the one in West London, this time in the Netherlands, in continental Europe. We translated the whole experience end to end in Italian, in French, and German, and start to basically go to market in these territories, explaining we were there, engaging with sellers, with buyers. And we saw phenomenal, literally triple-digit growth, doubling and trebling and quadrupling, sometimes year over year. So we have over 100 team members in Europe now across these 2 authentication centers and our business office in London. And we are seeing hundreds of thousands of transactions, coming through, and no signs of slowing down, which is very, very exciting.
So tell me a little bit about how a seller would manage their business with StockX. Obviously, you used to work for eBay. You know what it's like. You do your listing on eBay. You've probably got a suite of multi-channel management tools to handle it, and the same with Amazon and OnBuy and other marketplaces. But StockX is a little bit different because obviously, if I'm selling on StockX, I'm almost listing it and it's sold the instant that I've listed it if I'm just accepting. So how are sellers managing it, and how can you manage something like that at scale?
We're putting a lot of effort into making life as simple as possible for our sellers. That's a real kind of core of the value proposition. So our basic experience, the sort of the every man experience, if you like, on StockX is already pretty sophisticated. You have as a seller a very clean view of all your live listings and trends, and you can make changes in a very sort of simple way. The next stage is to use a dedicated tool that we call StockX Pro, which is basically a bit like the sort of managed tool that you mentioned, that gives you just the next level of tools and capabilities to manage your listings at scale. And that's available to sellers that sort of are past a certain level of sales, certain track record with us, and it comes with account management support. So what we rarely hear from sellers is, gosh, this is hard work, I'm putting too much effort into this. I mean, there's obviously work that needs to be done to source and manage your listings, but we continue to invest in making sure that sort of seller tool and seller experience is very seamless.
And what about the actual logistics side? If I've got 10 units or something, and I'm lucky enough that there's 10 bids within an acceptable price range, so I sell the lot, do I have to ship them individually to you? Can I bulk ship to you? How does that work?
I'm glad you ask about that, because we've recognized that as our sellers sort of grow in scale and in velocity with us, packaging individual items is not super practical. So we absolutely offer a bulk shipping program, which allows you as a seller to sort of combine typically 6 items, in one box with one label, ship it to us in one go, and that makes it life a lot easier,
Yeah.
for you from the logistics side. And it's something that's proven very successful indeed for our sellers. Actually, we have over 50% of our sort of power sellers, as we call them, shipping to us on a sort of bulk shipping basis.
Mm. Now, I'm kind of interested. We've got to recognise that we are in a multi-marketplace world nowadays, and that there are other marketplaces out there as well. What kind of advice can you offer people that are maybe selling on eBay, OnBuy, Amazon, maybe some European marketplaces? What should their be strategy thoughts when they're thinking, okay, I'm going to put StockX in this mix? Obviously, you're not a marketplace that you just chuck everything on, because it's a catalog, it's curated, it's high demand goods. But should I be kind of dipping my toe in the water? Should I be coming along every day and picking a couple of products and let's go and have a look and see if I can shift these on StockX? Or should I be, every time I get a delivery, thinking, actually, on my next order to my supplier, I'm going to put X amount of these premium products on? How do you think someone should integrate you into their business plan?
Absolutely. So one of the ways I'd think about it is, be mindful of which audiences you want to reach with which products. StockX is phenomenal for products with scarcity, product that are kind of current culture, product that are aimed at a sort of Gen Z audience, and halos around. It's not exclusively Gen Z. So I'm pretty confident in saying that for those sorts of products aimed at that type of audience, StockX offers a pretty unrivaled channel. And I would definitely encourage anybody who has those sort of products, who wants to trade for into that particular audience, to do so. Actually, an anecdote there is, obviously during the whole pandemic, a lot of people have got into how could I make a bit of extra money? I've got a bit of spare time, or I just want to sort of shift to more of an e-commerce experience. We saw hundreds of thousands of first-time sellers engage with StockX, and collectively they've traded nearly $1 billion, $800 million worth of sales in the period from March 2020 to April 2021. Each first-time seller has already traded seven times on average, and some of them obviously a lot more than that. So there is absolutely room for more, so to speak. So my first advice would be, give it a try. If you've got those sorts of products, or you think you can source them, if you want to target that audience, StockX absolutely has a place in your portfolio. Then it becomes our job to make the experience awesome, the velocity great, your profitability compelling, and you will, hopefully gradually, put more stock through us.
And a lot of people are obviously interested in attracting that younger audience to their brands. Is there any way they can measure the appeal of their brand through StockX to them? And I'm thinking large brand owners rather than small businesses here, but how can they measure the engagement? How can they remarket to these buyers in the future?
So the visibility of the data on the platform is one of the key advantages for StockX, and we make it available to everybody. You sort of register and you can see a lot of that information, and we know that brands use StockX as a barometer for how their products trade and the price trends and the like, and obviously and watch their competitors do that as well. So there's absolutely an opportunity to do that. As we work closely with some brands, we obviously have richer data sets that we can tap into and provide, and we have a remarkable business intelligence teams who help us draw out some extremely interesting kind of facts and trends out of this data. We can be very confident, for instance, in predicting in the first few days of how an item is trading, what the likely kind of lifespan of that item is going to be, whether the price is going up or sort of come down, as an example. We can also detect trends really early on and sort of be very aware of, what's bubbling up, and use that information in partnership with our sellers to make sure that the right products are being stocked. So there is a wealth of information, most of which is available to everybody just by joining StockX and watching those indicators.
And someone's just asked again, do you do fulfillment if they sell the same product to many customers? I think we kind of touched on that before, that if I make multiple sales, I can put them all in one box and ship to you, and you'll fulfill to multiple buyers.
But it's probably worth going through that again, because I know it may be a slightly sort of alien concept. When you sell on StockX, you ship to StockX. So as a seller, you might have sold 10 items to the same customer or 10 items to multiple customers. You still do one shipment, or however many we allow, depending on the size of our bulk shipping kind of boxes, but you will ship to us as many as you can, and then we take care of the rest. So the fulfillment to one product, multiple customers, is taken care of.
And then a really interesting question: do I need permission from a brand owner to sell their products on your platform? And I'm guessing there's some deeper sort of thoughts behind this question, as in some retailers will have sort of vertical trading agreements where they can perhaps only sell in their own country, or restrictions on you can sell online but only your own website. So do I need permission from a brand owner to sell on StockX?
As far as we know, as a seller, you will have procured the item in a legitimate way, and you will have title on it and the ability to sell it on. Generally speaking, we very rarely, if any, sort of hear of any concerns around, is the seller allowed to trade or not? So I've never really seen that as an issue as such, to be honest.
And I guess, to be fair, as the buyer and seller don't know who each other are, as far as the brand's concerned, they don't know if a consumer's bought that product from a retailer and then decided to sell it on StockX, or whether it's the retailer. They probably can't even see that, as the trades are kind of anonymous.
I think that's right.
So an interesting area there on whether you need permission from the brand owner. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and I don't want to run out of time, Olivia. So before we do run out of time, if I'm interested, where do I go to get started? And I can't kind of preface that with, if you're out there and you're interested in watching this right now while Tamebay Live is running, go straight to the partner showcases, go to the StockX showcase, and you can make contact with them there. But people are going to be watching this as a recording in the weeks and months to come, so that they won't have the luxury of going to your showcase on Tamebay Live. So how do they get in touch with you? And what's the best way of connecting?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's several ways, and perhaps if we can bring up the slide that we prepared that sort of shows some of those specific contact points. First and foremost, on the website itself, you would have a whole section which is around StockX About Us, and you will have the whole section on selling. So stockx.com about selling. You should see that on your screen right now. You can also contact us at tamebay@stockx.com and sort of basically get in touch with questions, with an expression of interest, with any sort of intro, and we will be absolutely happy to follow up. And this email address will stay open for many weeks after this live show. So if anybody watches the recording, is very welcome to get in touch.
So that's
And then
tamebay@stockx.com.
exactly. We're just sort of
That's about
keep it
as easy
simple.
as it gets.
Exactly. And then by all means, find me on LinkedIn and connect. If as I'm connecting to a few of you on this platform as well, during this particular show this week. But otherwise, find me on LinkedIn. I've put my address there, but then my name is unusual enough that there's not 100 of them, even if you can't quite type all that in. Olivier Van Kalster, and I'll be more than happy to connect and either answer your questions myself or put you in touch with one of my incredible and talented team who can pick things up as well.
So I've got to ask, where do you see the future for StockX? Is it just going deeper into the categories you're already in and adding new products as, like you mentioned, consumer electronics, the next Xbox, the next PlayStation, as the consoles come out, is it just adding those in? Or is it broadening out into more categories?
I think we're very clear on the axes of growth for the business, which I think are absolutely phenomenal. There is a lot of runway in kind of the categories that we are in place already. The sneaker reselling itself is forecast to be worth over $30 billion, in the next few years. The categories that we've expanded into, some of them we're literally just dipping a toe. So there's going to be a lot of investment in just going deeper and providing even more liquidity in those categories. We're also expanding geographically. We've just opened an authentication center in Melbourne, in Australia. We're now live in Japan and in Hong Kong. We've got, a big sort of opportunity to grow across a number of markets in Asia. And by the way, that's for the benefit of the global marketplace, because the supply that might exist over there can benefit a buyer in Europe and in the US. And conversely, those buyers will have a huge appetite for some of the products that a seller in the UK might be able to source. So that becomes like this sort of amazing network effect that marketplaces create.
So that is adding the liquidity of demand.
Precisely.
For trades.
And in Europe itself, we're not done by any stretch. We want to continue to grow in a number of markets. We're not done by any stretch. Even in the UK, which is our oldest market, a whole 3 years of it, as well as Germany, France, Italy, and a number of other markets in Europe.
So Olivier, we're literally coming up to the end of our time. So if there's just one thing, one message that you want to get out there for someone that's thinking of selling on StockX, what would it be?
Well, our job is to make it as easy for you as it possibly can be, to sell on StockX. So give it a try. You've got all the information at your fingertips there. You know what products are traded, what the going rates are. We make it as easy as possible. There are no listings. There's free shipping if you're in the UK, for instance. So give it a try. And get in touch with us to tell us how you're doing.
So I think the one marketplace I know where you don't have to deal with buyers for a change. It's literally you're listing a product and making it available at the price that you set, that there's probably already buyers there willing to have it. But so long as the product is authentic and it is what you said it is, then once it's authenticated, the deal is done as far as you're concerned. So exactly. Just once more, that email address, tamebay@stockx.com. And Olivier, I really want to thank you for your time this afternoon. It's been absolutely fascinating. And if you don't catch hold of Olivier today, please drop past his showcase or look him up on LinkedIn, or just email tamebay@stockx.com.
Thank you.
But I want to thank everyone today. This brings the end of our brand day for Tamebay Live. But come back tomorrow when we're going to be looking at cross-border, and there's a whole load of hugely talented speakers going to be sharing their time and expertise on everything to do with selling overseas. And then on Friday, we're going to be looking a little bit more about how to expand your marketplace and business and grow for the future. So the totem platform that we're running Tamebay Live on is open for the next hour. So take the time to go to the networking areas, meet with friends, have any meetings you need to do, drop past the presenting partners showcases, and the StockX showcase is open. And come back tomorrow for more of Tamebay Live. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all of our presenting partners, to our co-host today, Ecomotors, and a special thank you to our title sponsor, eBay. Thank you to everyone that's made Tamebay Live possible this week.